Jonathan Trist sat behind his worn oak desk, savoring the bitter aroma of his morning coffee, a lonely light bulb overhead piercing the early morning gloom. His office was a mirror of himself, a tapestry of weathered resilience, of faded newspaper clippings pinned haphazardly to the peeling wallpaper, of ancient case files stacked in precarious towers, of unspoken stories etched into the grooves of the wooden floor. He'd become part of the fabric of Iowa City, as dependable as the town clock, as constant as the river's flow. As he sipped his coffee, the door creaked open, and in walked Patrick O'Donnell, an old high school buddy who'd made good, swapping a Letterman jacket for the polished sophistication of city council robes. His eyes held the shimmer of a secret. "Morning, Pat," Jonathan greeted, voice gravelly, betraying years of suppressed emotions and countless cigarettes. "Morning, John. Thanks for seeing me," Patrick responded, glancing around the room as if trying to uncover pieces of the past in its time-worn corners. Patrick then told his tale of a city above a city, a sewer system sprawled like a twisted artery beneath the beating heart of Iowa, of whispers and hushed tones, rumors sown in the dim corners of pubs about strange noises echoing from the subterranean depths, and shadows moving in ways shadows ought not to move, of speculation about a secret laboratory tucked away in this unseen world, an enigma cloaked in fear and suspicion. Jonathan listened, his eyes lingering on the scar on Patrick's knuckles, a stark memento of the favor he'd owed him since high school, a debt birthed in a fight that had left Patrick bruised but undefeated, and Jonathan forever in his debt. "Do you believe it?" Jonathan asked, setting down his coffee cup, the ceramic clink reverberating in the silence. Patrick's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and hope. "I don't know, John," he admitted, "but we owe it to this city to find out." Jonathan nodded, their shared history resounding in the heavy air between them. He knew he'd walk this path for Patrick, face the unknowable depths and the echoes of fear that resonated through their town. With a sigh of acceptance, he stood, picking up his weathered coat from the back of his chair. His research led him through a labyrinth of forgotten tales and unconnected threads. Strange occurrences, faces vanished into the ether, and night sounds that chilled the blood of the bravest men. Each discovery was like a dark pearl, seemingly unconnected, yet he could feel the presence of an invisible thread pulling him towards the darkness. He stood at the entrance to the sewers, the chill of the descending night creeping into his bones, the city's heartbeat fading into the eerie silence of the underground. The world below was a specter of the world above, a reflection seen through a distorted dark mirror. He took a deep breath, steeling himself before entering the unseen, his mind whispering the silent vow to return the favor, to unearth the truth that haunted their city, regardless of what lurked in the unseen depths. The bowels of the city were a symphony of shadows and echoes, each footstep ricocheting off dank stone, rebounding into the labyrinthine black. Jonathan descended, the sour taste of anxiety mixing with the stench of the sewers. The gloom swallowed him, wrapped him in a cold shroud of foreboding. His flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating stretches of weathered brickwork, slick with the gloss of perpetual dampness. The air tasted ancient, heavy with secrets cradled in the crook of each sewer pipe, each forgotten alcove. His heart pounded an unsteady rhythm, the thrumming pulse of an intruder in a world untouched by daylight. The echoing drip of unseen water was his only companion, a relentless reminder of his isolation. As he navigated the subterranean arteries of Iowa City, a disquieting aura crept over him. He felt as if unseen eyes were tracing his path, as though the very shadows held their breath at his passing. He shook his head, chasing away the phantom whispers of his mind, reminding himself of the duty he had to the surface world, to Patrick. Eventually, the monotony of the tunnels broke, and he found it, an aberration in the heart of the labyrinth. A door of gleaming, cold metal stood incongruously against the decaying brickwork, pulsing with an unseen energy that prickled at the nape of his neck. A strange symbol, alien and grotesque, was engraved onto its surface, a stark contrast to the utilitarian severity of the surrounding environment. He pushed the door open, a cold draft stirring the stagnant air, carrying the scent of something undefinable, sterile, metallic, and tinged with a faint scent of ozone. As he stepped inside, an uncanny silence descended, and he found himself standing in the throes of an unimaginable reality. He had found the secret laboratory, an uncanny space crowded with strange apparatus, glass tubes filled with glowing liquids of unearthly colors, screens flashing with incomprehensible data, and walls etched with bizarre symbols, eerily reminiscent of the mark on the door. The harsh, fluorescent lighting cast an otherworldly pallor over everything, distorting the familiar and amplifying the alien. Tables scattered haphazardly across the space held piles of leather-bound notebooks, their pages filled with frantic, indecipherable scripts and disconcerting sketches of impossible beings, forms both abhorrent and fascinating in their alienness. It was a language of madness, a testament to an intelligence beyond human comprehension. The atmosphere was electric with an anticipatory dread, a watchfulness that suggested a presence, a life. The silence was a canvas on which his mind painted monstrous specters of the unseen inhabitants. The laboratory was devoid of humans, yet it hummed with an unnameable energy that strummed along his every nerve. He moved closer to one of the contraptions, its humming presence more potent than the others, his mind drawing him toward it like a moth to a flame. As he extended a hesitant hand towards the strange device, his touch sparked a reaction. The room filled with a low hum, a vibration that resonated within his chest. He drew back, the emptiness of the laboratory pulsating around him, leading him into the unknown abyss. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the cold steel floor and vibrating against his very bones. The room shimmered as though distorted by a summer's haze. Jonathan, caught in the grip of a nameless dread, watched as the space before him undulated, reality rippling like a disturbed pond. A crack appeared in the air, a tear in the very fabric of existence. It pulsed with an eldritch energy, casting strange, refracted light across the sterile laboratory, a window to another realm. His breath hitched in his chest as he gazed upon it. What he witnessed was a panorama of alien cosmos, a landscape of twisted physics and impossible geometries. There were entities there, monstrous and vast, lurking in the chasms between stars. They shifted and squirmed, their forms an abhorrent fluidity that scorched his mind with their blasphemous existence. As swiftly as it appeared, the vision evaporated, the hum dying down to an eerie silence. He leaned heavily against a metal table, took a shaky breath, the air in the laboratory tasting of iron and terror. "What the hell was that?" he whispered into the oppressive silence, his voice a lone human sound in a place decidedly devoid of humanity. The question hung in the air, unanswered, a hollow echo of his escalating horror. Now, with the chilling knowledge of what resided beyond, the frantic symbols etched into the laboratory walls took on a sinister significance. The arcane language, the chaotic illustrations, they were depictions of the unholy visitors from the dark dimension. Each missing person, each eerie phenomenon, they were not isolated incidents but pieces of a dreadful mosaic. This was a grotesque puppet theater, with the strings being pulled from a realm beyond comprehension, the laboratory serving as the stage door. With the weight of revelation pressing against his psyche, he moved stiffly, his body a mere automaton. The room, once merely alien, was now a tangible nightmare, an outpost of a dark dimension in the heart of Iowa City. He could feel the threads of his sanity fraying, his steadfast demeanor crumbling under the onslaught of cosmic terror. Each shadow seemed to writhe with hidden horrors, each hum of machinery a herald of another unwanted revelation. Once just a detective and a friend, he was now a reluctant voyager on the tumultuous seas of interdimensional horrors. He had unearthed a truth far more monstrous than any rumor, any urban legend he had ever encountered. He realized he needed to escape, to get back to the surface, back to the safety of ignorance. The enormity of his discovery dwarfed him. His loyalty to Patrick, to Iowa City, hung heavy within him, a millstone around his neck pulling him deeper into the terrifying abyss. But he knew he had to press on, to face the looming nightmare that was fast bleeding into the reality of his city, his world. In a dreadful daze, he turned to the exit, the laboratory behind him pulsing with an alien life of its own. But even as he reached for the door, he felt a shift in the air, a crackle of energy that made his heart freeze. The laboratory was coming alive once more, the gateway reopening, heralding the imminent entry of the cosmic horrors into his world. His nightmare was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The air shivered with the birth of another cosmic vision. Jonathan staggered back, a primal fear anchoring him to the spot. Reality folded upon itself, giving way to the hideous vista of the dark dimension. From the widening crack, the unspeakable forms began to spill forth, their fluid shapes barely constrained by the laws of physics as we understand them. He could hear the alien echoes, the monstrous whispers of the beings pouring into the laboratory. His mind, exposed to the stark terror of their presence, frayed at the edges. He could taste the metallic tang of fear in the air, could feel the temperature drop as the first entity began to manifest. It was a grotesque creature of writhing tendrils and shifting shadows, a beast born of dark matter and cosmic chaos. Its presence was oppressive, a physical weight that pulled at his sanity, threatening to tear it apart. As the entity moved closer, the world seemed to bend around it, a grotesque distortion of reality. With a surge of adrenaline, he forced himself into motion, his survival instinct silencing the screaming terror within him. He stumbled towards the door, every step feeling like he was wading through the dense dread that filled the room. His heart pounded a frenzied rhythm against his ribs, each beat a countdown to an unthinkable fate. He reached the door just as the alien entity lunged, the air crackling with malignant energy. Slamming the door behind him, he began his desperate ascent, the alien hum fading into a discordant echo that followed him through the labyrinthine darkness. The city beneath the city was no longer a familiar haunt, but a twisted warren filled with the echoing terror of the lab. Each shadow held a threat, each echoing drip a warning of what lurked beneath. But he pushed onward, the fear of what lay behind him fueling his desperate escape. After what felt like an eternity in the bowels of dread, he emerged from the sewers. The night was silent, the town clock chimed distantly, its toll a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. The familiar sights of Iowa City were a stark contrast to the alien horrors below, the quaint structures of humanity oblivious to the dread that lurked beneath them. He sat on the curb, the cold concrete a grounding reality against the tumult of his mind. He was a changed man, the horrors he'd witnessed a permanent scar on his psyche. He stared at the sewer entrance, a gateway to a nightmare he'd narrowly escaped, his duty to Patrick fulfilled in the most dreadful way. He lit a cigarette, the mundane act oddly comforting. The world was a far stranger place than he had ever imagined. The boundaries between the possible and the impossible blurred beyond recognition. As he sat there, the early morning sun began to peek over the horizon, casting long, creeping shadows across the city, a stark reminder of the darkness lurking just below. His world had irrevocably changed, the cosmic horror he had witnessed leaving him a solitary beacon of knowledge in a sea of blissful ignorance. The weight of his revelation was a burden he alone had to bear. As he took one last drag of his cigarette, he knew that his life would forever be tethered to the darkness, a detective forever marked by his journey into the abyss. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.